So next will be our today's first panel. It's about public blockchain challenges and the trends. So our moderator would be CEO of Multiplied, Nancy, and our panelists are Doreen, Director of ETC Labs, Naveed, Head of Engineering at Algorand, Nick, Co-founder of Harmony, and James, VP Engineering of Bytom. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hello, can everyone hear me? All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Bytom's DevCon. And yes, like Yi mentioned, we are going to be talking about public blockchains, trends, challenges, and we have a great panel assembled today. But first, I'll let them go around and just introduce themselves, their names, their roles, and the companies that they're a part of and what they're building. So go ahead.
Thank you, Nancy. Welcome. My name is Darren Katalik. I'm the head of marketing for Ethereum Classic Labs. We've been around in the US for about a year, and we have 3 distinct programs. We have our accelerator team that invests and mentors startups to develop products, do a go-to-market strategy, and launch new products. We also have our core development team, which is 15 plus developers worldwide that advance the development of the Ethereum Classic protocol and the configuration and development tools. And we were just talking, we just launched a new program called Studio that we do consulting services for companies that need marketing and technical support for launching new technology. So, thank you.
Naveed?
Hi, thank you. I'm Naveed Sinola, head of engineering research at Algorand. We've been around for, at least officially, for about 18 months. Before that, it was a research project with Silvio, our founder, and his students. What Algorand is doing is we're a layer 1 blockchain built from first principles, and Silvio is very passionate about solving the infamous blockchain trilemma. With our mainnet launch 2 months ago, we believe we've done that. We have Visa scale payments continuously going, that performance since the mainnet launched. And I think really all the exciting stuff begins today, or actually begins with mainnet launch. We're looking at how do we bring the dApp ecosystem of the other blockchains over to Algorand easily and smoothly. And more importantly, I think for me, I have a background at Mozilla with web devs, and I realized there's an untapped set of developers in the tens of millions that I'd love to see looking at blockchain as a first-class platform for them to build on, and for financial institutions and ourselves to be able to transact on, now that we have a technology that supports that. Thank you.
Hi, guys. I'm Nick White. I'm co-founder of Harmony. Harmony is a scalable smart contract platform. We're one of the first protocols to be production grade, combining proof of stake and sharding together. We think that sharding is the only long-term solution to blockchain scalability. Our team is based here in Silicon Valley. We have engineers from Google, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook. So we've taken a lot of the top talent from the big 5 engineering companies, tech companies, and we're using their knowledge and expertise to build scalable software into building a scalable blockchain. So you may have heard of us when we did our IEO on Binance in June. And we are currently on our mainnet and slowly transitioning from a more permissioned blockchain to fully permissionless. And we recently made an acquisition of a gaming company. We're really passionate about gaming, decentralized finance, and data sharing. And so recently we acquired a gaming company called Quid, which has one of the largest digital collectible ecosystems. And we're really passionate about trying to build NFTs and extensible gaming on Harmony, among other things.
Okay, so hi again. So my name is James, and I'm the VP engineering for Bytom. So currently, the Bytom's core development team have around 20 core developers. And what Bytom, so I think Bytom is the first blockchain which is using the UTX mode and support the smart contract. And what we are currently doing is what I just talked about. So it's the bystack. So a platform which allow the enterprise or government can be used blockchain as using blockchain integration as a third-party server.
Marketing for Ethereum Classic Labs. We've been around in the US for about a year, and we have 3 distinct programs. We have our accelerator team that invests and mentors startups to develop products, do a go-to-market strategy, and launch new products. We also have our core development team, which is 15 plus developers worldwide that advance the development of the Ethereum Classic protocol and the configuration and development tools. And we were just talking, we just launched a new program called Studio that we do consulting services for companies that need marketing and technical support for launching new technology. So, thank you.
Naveed?
Hi, thank you. I'm Naveed Sinolda, Head of Engineering Research at Algorand. We've been around for, at least officially, for about 18 months. Before that, it was a research project with Silvio, our founder, and his students. What Algorand is doing is we're a layer 1 blockchain built from first principles, and Silvio is very passionate about solving the infamous blockchain trilemma. With our mainnet launch 2 months ago, we believe we've done that. We have Visa scale payments continuously going, that performance since the mainnet launched. And I think really all the exciting stuff begins today, or actually begins with mainnet launch. We're looking at how do we bring the dApp ecosystem of the other blockchains over to Algorand easily and smoothly. And more importantly, I think for me, I have a background at Mozilla with web devs, and I realized there's an untapped set of developers in the tens of millions that I'd love to see looking at blockchain as a first-class platform for them to build on, and for financial institutions and ourselves to be able to transact on, now that we have a technology that supports that. Thank you.
Hi guys, I'm Nick White. I'm co-founder of Harmony. Harmony is a scalable smart contract platform. We're one of the first protocols to be production grade, combining proof of stake and sharding together. We think that sharding is the only long-term solution to blockchain scalability. Our team is based here in Silicon Valley. We have engineers from Google, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook. So we've taken a lot of the top talent from the big 5 engineering companies, tech companies, and we're using their knowledge and expertise to build scalable software into building a scalable blockchain. So you may have heard of us when we did our IEO on Binance in June, and we are currently on our mainnet and slowly transitioning from a more permissioned blockchain to fully permissionless. And we recently made an acquisition of a gaming company. We're really passionate about gaming, decentralized finance, and data sharing. And so recently we acquired a gaming company called Quid, which has one of the largest digital collectible ecosystems. And we're really passionate about trying to build NFTs and extensible gaming on Harmony, among other things.
Okay, so hi again. So my name is James, and I'm the VP engineering for Bytom. So currently, the Bytom's core development team have around 20 core developers. And what Bytom, so I think Bytom is the first blockchain which is using the UTX mode and support the smart contract. And what we are currently doing is what I just talked about. So it's the stack. So a platform which allow the enterprise or government can be used blockchain as using blockchain integration as a third-party server.
Awesome, thanks for sharing. So you guys had the chance, you guys are all building exciting projects based on layer 1 or being involved in them. But what would you guys say are the top 3 challenges public blockchains are facing nowadays? And we can talk about scalability trilemma, but maybe in your opinion, what you see is the biggest challenge. And then what about, let's say in the next 3 to 5 years and what that looks like?
I think education. I think a lot of times people think public blockchains, all your information is out there just for everybody to look at, and that's not necessarily the case. I think just understanding the difference between a public and a private blockchain and when to use it and when not to use it, I think there's still a lot of discovery that people are trying to figure out. And I think for the most part, it's not a competition like public chains or proof of stake or proof of work. They're all like competing with each other. You just have to figure out the right technology for what you're trying to do and accomplish.
Naveed?
Yeah, I'd like to sort of build on what Darren was saying, that 3 challenges are, for me, in 3 different domains. The technical challenge of how do you have a blockchain that does all the things you need while still being public, permissionless, which is stuff I care about a lot, or if it needs to be private, how do you do that in a way that's meaningful and still sort of represents the beliefs that we sort of want blockchain to sometimes represent. Adoption, or the cultural aspect, is a huge piece of it. I think everyone in this room is really passionate about blockchains and technology, but if I walk even in San Francisco, a very technically minded city, how much do they know? And are they willing to build their next idea on it? So there's a lot of education for sure that needs to happen to build that out. And the final piece of this, the one maybe we have the least control over, is legal governmental regulation. There isn't great guidance in all jurisdictions. We're seeing adoption occur where education and governmental guidance is clear, sadly outside of the United States. We, Algorand, and our partners are actively engaged with our government and other governments to do things in the best possible way. So they understand that we're a serious project, that we want to follow appropriate regulations and guidance. But at the end of the day, there's some amount of uncertainty there. And so, I'd love to see that uncertainty go away.
I want to echo that, actually. I think that the top 3 challenges are the technology, the regulation, and adoption. I think as far as regulation goes, we don't have that much control, actually. So projects, we're all kind of existing within the same regulatory kind of environment. We can go elsewhere overseas for building our business or building applications. So that's one approach to trying to get around the regulation. The other piece, as far as technology, I think a lot of people are kind of converging on similar tech stacks as far as scalability goes. So it seems like there's actually going to be a lot of platforms that are offering a very similar product. And that's why adoption is actually the hardest thing. When we have so many different public blockchains coming online, how do we differentiate ourselves and how do we go ahead from our competitors? And I think the way that we think about this is rather than trying to just look at the existing crypto world and try to fight over the developers and the applications that are on crypto, the truth is there actually aren't that many developers, there aren't that many applications on crypto to begin with. And so what we should be thinking is a lot bigger. How do we bring in the next 10 million developers? How do we bring in the next applications with millions of users? And our approach is actually to go after applications that already exist. There are already existing mobile apps with 1 million users, and they have some sort of, there's a feature of blockchain that we can implement into their platform, into their product to make it better. And that's why, for example, Quid, the application that we acquired, is one of those use cases where they have digital collectibles. They're not using blockchain. We can turn those digital collectibles into NFTs, and there's all different kinds of ways in which you can monetize now. There's extensible games that you can build on top of that. So that's the way that we look at adoption. I think that's what's going to differentiate all the different public blockchains in the coming year.
Yes, so from my understanding, so the technical part is not really hard. So the actual challenge is on the business part. So first, the question is, okay, so how you should convince people use blockchain? So what blockchain can give them? Okay, is it solve problem for them? If not, so they don't really have reason to use blockchain. Okay, and then the second question is if you found a pinpoint which blockchain can solve. So why use your chain? If Bitcoin can do it, why I'm not using Bitcoin? So it's kind of how to win the challenge between thousands of blockchains. So what we did is we released the Bystack platform. So it's kind of like Amazon cloud servers. So Amazon actually provide all the company are easy way to use to build their own cloud servers and build the business logic on top of the cloud servers. So what we did is we use Bystack to prove a platform to let the enterprise can easily use the blockchain system, can easily integrate the blockchain into their logic.
Great, thanks for sharing. And I think, when we're looking at public blockchains, I mean, my perspective is I'm coming from a marketing PR agency standpoint. We talk a lot of things like regulation and mass adoption. I mean, those are all challenges that we are all facing. So what have you guys observed has worked and that you guys are continually building on and driving that forward, whether it's adoption, or I guess when it does come to adoption?
I think we're still at the beginning stages of like mass adoption. We were talking about the things that we've invested in at ETC Labs. Early on, it was all infrastructure, and I think we're all part of that whole that side of it right now. Right now, we're also looking at level 2 protocols for like data integrity and building communities. But I think next year, I think we're going to start really seeing more consumer-facing dApps or more broader dApps that are going to be solving different problems. So I think it's just the evolution of emerging technology. You work on the infrastructure, you work on the tools, and then we're going to find, hopefully, and I think a lot of investors are probably thinking that it would have taken off a lot faster than now. But hopefully we'll see some mass adoptions in different areas around the world.
I want to actually build a little bit off what Nick said earlier. I think we have the best technology. Probably everyone wants to believe they have the best technology, but the technology is converging. And so adoption ends up taking some sort of different aspects. And the reality, from my experience talking to many people about blockchain, is to some extent they can't differentiate the subtle nuances between this technology stack and that. So what does adoption really mean? Well, I want the world's developers to be able to build on us. I want the world's corporate entities to understand enough about blockchain's value prop to recognize that's what they should use. And so to that extent, borrowing on my experience at Mozilla running the JavaScript and WebAssembly teams, we noticed there's a massive adoption takeoff when we built the tools that lower the barrier to entry for developers. When we found specific use cases, the use case for WebAssembly actually turned out to be, how do you get a AAA video game in a browser? That's incredibly compelling. You can do that. You can convince anyone anything can end up in the browser. So we're looking for those sort of use cases with partners today. And I think we found some, but we now need to get that last mile done where they're implemented in public. And when when the Fortune 500 companies see one of their peers built on top of a blockchain technology successfully, when the developers of the world see familiar tools that they have from whether it's iOS backgrounds or web dev backgrounds, they seem to see the same sort of tool chain. I think we'll see their adoption increase as well. And I guess the final piece of that is education. One of my colleagues from Mozilla, I convinced him to come join us. He worked on Mozilla Development Network, arguably one of the premier resources for web documentation in the world, to work on our stack and write that up. And we're hoping all these elements at once will sort of pin people in and improve adoption.
Great. And what about you, Nick?
So I think I said earlier, when it comes to adoption and the use cases that we're trying to target, there's gaming, decentralized finance or open finance, and then data sharing. And I list them in that order for a very specific reason. I think that data sharing is probably the farthest out, but it's a very compelling use case. I think everyone talks about, oh, we should decentralize Facebook, or I think the information economy has become monopolized by the big tech companies. And so in the long range, we want to change that and give people sovereignty over the data, but I think that's really, really far out. We're going to need to see adoption in many other areas, like the applications, before we can touch on that. In decentralized finance and open finance, I think we're seeing the first green shoots of growth there, especially on Ethereum. That's where Ethereum's finding its product market fit. But also the problem with decentralized finance is that the technology needs to be very mature because you need to make sure that everything is secure. You don't want to have the world's financial stack running on blockchain when there could be critical bugs in your smart contract, or even the protocol itself is not mature. I think Bitcoin is lucky that it's 10 years old. It's the oldest and the simplest. So it has that kind of security where people are willing to put that much money into it. But it's going to take a long time for us to get to the level where decentralized finance can be on that global scale. And beyond that, decentralized finance has the regulatory roadblocks. So MakerDAO is even kind of operating within this legal gray zone, and I think that a lot of DeFi applications will be facing that same kind of problem for the near future until the regulation kind of sorts out. And so that leaves us with gaming, in which that is the use case that we're most excited about in the near term, because there is no regulatory roadblocks. It's just games and trading items. And there's no need for high security. Obviously, you want some base level of security because people don't want their stuff to get hacked. But at the same time, it's not like the whole world's financial infrastructure is going to be running on this. It's just gamers. So gaming, I think, is a perfect interim use case to build up to the bigger ones down the line. And that's why we're really betting hard on gaming.
Okay, so talking about the adoption, right? So
Yeah.
I don't really see any really adoption currently using the blockchain. So all the enterprise use are just leave the message on the blockchain, use it as a database or log. It's not really use blockchain, okay? So, and adoption, I think the really adoption comes from the small company. Like in the 19th century, so it's not the big companies began to use the internet. It's always start with the small company, because big company have really huge business logic, and if they want to replace part of it with blockchain, it's really hard, and they need to change a lot. So I think but small company can just create their own business logic as whatever they want. So I think it's the start point will be like a small company found a pinpoint which can solve by the blockchain and create their own business model. Then more company will follow this model. Then finally, the big company will be forced to change their business model to use the blockchain. Yeah, that's it.
Right, and to your point, I think, going back to what Naveed said, there are a lot of companies out there, and if you think from an enterprise level, they're looking at all of these public blockchains and trying to figure out which one to build on. And of course, nowadays, we have so many different consensus mechanisms. I'm curious to see what you guys, are there any favorites of yours beside your own that you're building? Are there any interesting ones that pique your interest? I mean, to name a few, we have traditional ones like proof of work, proof of stake, but we have new ones, proof of history, proof of space-time. But yeah, if there are any interesting ones to you guys besides your own.
Obviously, we believe in proof of work. It's been around for a long time, and it's a proven technology. Again, I think it depends on what you're trying to solve. Like proof of stake, there's different versions of proof of stake that can solve different problems in scalability and security and data sovereignty. But I think proof of authority is kind of an interesting one, depending on how you apply it. But again, you look at all the different flavors, and I don't think one is better than the other. It depends on how you're applying it. So, I'll let the more technical guys talk about it.
I actually don't think of consensus technically most of the time. That's the sort of manifestation of it. I look at the properties I want to achieve, and what's important to me is public and permissionless is really important to me. I think it's possible to build anything you want privately on top of a public permissionless system. The internet is a perfect example of this. We have VPNs and everything running on top of that, but if we build the permanent right, public permission is the best starting point, because when I decide I want to open up my private enterprise to Darren, to Nick, and to James, well, I'm already on a backbone that supports that. So that property of consensus is essential to me. The trilemma properties of scalability, decentralization, and security, I don't think they're like table stakes. So any consensus protocol that supports that, at least you have my attention. But it's the other pieces, I think, that really get me interested. Instant finality. I don't want statistical finality. I know the financial institutions don't want statistical finality because, if JP Morgan and Fidelity swap something and then 4 hours later something happened and, well, it didn't happen, it's hard to, I'm sure financial crisis is what we'll see. Properties like having resistance to Sybil attacks, the sort of security levels we need, all those are very interesting to me. Nakamoto-style consensus was awesome because they kicked off an entire industry. There's all these proof-of-stake variants like delegated and bonded that I think concentrate, once again, so they fail the decentralization piece. There's a new crop of consensus protocols, ours included, that are now actually looking at something that I don't think we really looked at before. What if the internet was taken over by one person and he could redirect everything around? Network partition resilience. I think all proof-of-work protocols suffer from this. Even proof-of-stake protocols that aren't hardened against it will suffer. So those are the properties I look at, and then I use that as my filter. Ethereum, if you want to name things that I'm actually interested in right now, Ethereum v2, I think all of us are probably interested in it because it's such a big deal. I want to see how they transition that. The transition problem may be more, when solved, more interesting to me than actually their consensus mechanism itself.
Right, I can agree. We'll see when that happens.
Yeah,
Right.
long-winded and that.
No, I think he pretty much said it all. So the only thing I can really add to that is that in the blockchain trilemma of security, scalability, and decentralization, I actually think that security and decentralization are very much intertwined, because if you think about security so the security in that trilemma is more like the technical security of the protocol. But if you think about the social security, or like if you zoom out and you look at the whole world, how secure is your blockchain from nation states trying to shut it down if you have only 21 block producers? The reality is that you're not that secure. In comparison to something like Bitcoin, where there are thousands, there are so many different miners all around the world. It's sort of like the Hydra. You cut one head off and more will come out. And so that's something that we really thought hard about because decentralization really is what makes blockchain what it is. Without that, what are we really building? It's not much different from a database. So that's why sharding, we feel, has the ability to maintain decentralization. We are talking about we actually already have thousands of nodes on our network right now. And that means that, aside from the fact that you can still try to take over the network by buying up enough tokens to come over 1/3 of the total stake on the network. But aside from that, if you're trying to actually kill each node to bring the network down, it's way more resilient. And also it's more resilient to network partitions, like he was saying. When the more nodes you have, the harder it is to make sure that you can cut them off, sort of like a firewall, so that then you can manipulate either side of the network. So that's why for us, sharding, it really has interesting properties and interesting advantages that other approaches to scalability don't have.
Okay, so in the computer science point of view, consensus algorithm is just the leader election algorithm in a distribution system. So what's the best? It actually depends on the situation. So for the public chain, I think the proof of work is actually the best, because it's already supported Bitcoin running for almost 10 years. And it's keep the maximum of the decentralized. And about the depose, actually, it's pretty dangerous. Use the 21 node. If you want, you can just spend hundreds of dollars. You can take one node down. Okay, but in different situations, if the blockchain is just running between our 4 companies or 5 companies, there's no really need to use the proof of work. Just maybe a depose algorithm is good enough. So what's the best algorithm is just based on the user situation.
I love it when you get technical people on a panel and they explain their criteria for their favorite consensus. I love it. But I know with your various projects, how are you guys explaining the benefits of the consensus mechanism you guys chose to go with? And are there certain messages that actually worked and resonated with people?
I think one thing is the technology is part of the different flavors of consensus algorithm. But there's also a philosophical reason why you choose a proof of stake over a proof of work. If you think about it, people got into this, and I think somebody mentioned about proof of work being around for a long time. mainly because the whole purpose of it was to democratize the opportunity. If you think about proof of work, anybody can get a pretty compelling computer to participate on a network, where proof of stake is more of you put more resources or more money to it, and that's just a different philosophy. So we feel that with proof of work, because of the decentralization, the community that supports it is really, really strong. It's been around for a long time. That's compelling, as well as the security of the data. And I think one thing that we really need to focus on is where that data travels, where it's created, how it's validated, and how it's stored. And the network needs to support all of that. And we think that, like obviously proof of work has been around for a while, so the security part of it and the immutability part of it is pretty strong, especially with the community that we've embraced.
So I think we were talking about how do we explain it and what seems to be the sort of uptake pieces of the protocol. For that, I'm actually going to borrow on our founder, Silvio Macaulay. He's a Turing Award winner, but I think he's fundamentally first a professor. And one thing I've learned from him is how do you take something incredibly complex and turn it into an analogy that you see people in the audience, their eyes light up, they're like, oh, I get that. And one of the things that he does when he talks about our proof of stake system is when comparing it to, say, proof of work, is he'll talk about proof of work generally and talk about proof of stake generally, then he'll show the slide that I love. It's a slide of a Genesis block and a feather right next to it. And he's like, watch this feather drop and the Genesis block, the chain of the proof of stake Algorand blockchain unfurl. And it'll just be one block after another in perfect sequence. And next to it will be this sort of haphazard, messed up tree of forks not taken, which would be a proof of work system. And when you see it graphically like that, the audience has almost always gone, oh, that makes sense to me. Where sometimes when you think about where the energy is being used up, and when people just talk about it in generalities, that's not as clear. The other piece is, we take security incredibly seriously at Algorand. In fact, right from the get-go, our threat model was the nation state. We want the world's finance to be secure, and when there's trillions of dollars on the line, if there's someone out there with a deep pocket and wants to be adversarial, they're going to go after this. And so he's talking about this concept of player replaceability. No one person, no one entity, or even group of entities is safe, but all of us are relatively safe. It's hard to go after the entire planet. And so this concept of player replaceability in our protocol is a key piece, and that is, Darren's just as important as me, as Nick, as James, et cetera, but because we can be instantly replaced at any step. And his way of demonstrating that by just showing the people and showing the fact that they say one thing and they're done. You can attack them after they say the one thing, does no good. They're done. And then the next person's up and the next person's up. And once again, I think these sort of really simple ways of describing key steps made the algorithm more approachable to those who are enthusiasts but maybe don't have the CS background.
Definitely, I agree. And what about you, Nick?
Well, I think one of the challenges that all blockchains face is that the technology is difficult to explain concisely. And so I think, we need like metaphors and we need diagrams to kind of show people the difference. And what it really comes down to, though, is the philosophy. I think if you're able to express the philosophy of what you stand for, then everyone can relate to that. And so at Harmony, that's where our name comes from, actually, is our deep-seated philosophy that we think blockchain can bring out more harmony in the world if used correctly. And again, it also ties back to this idea of decentralization. Harmony, the word, is about lots of different notes, lots of different voices, singing different pitches, but melding into one sound overall. And that sort of, for me, encaptures this idea of decentralization being so important. And as we were saying, decentralization is also about security, but it's also about the fact that everyone has a chance to participate and everyone has the chance to benefit. It's all about being open. And that's why all of our decisions of our design, from proof of stake to sharding, everything else flows from that core philosophy. So that's what it's about for me. I hope that makes sense to everyone. Yeah.
Definitely, James.
Okay. So the question is like what consensus algorithm we are using, right?
Oh, the question was essentially, how are you guys explaining your consensus, and are there certain messages that have worked or have not worked at all?
So we actually choose the proof of work consensus, and we found like one of the advantage of proof of work is it's actually have an ecosystem built on it, because the proof of work you need like miners and mining pools, and the miner and mining pools are like the first batch of developer of the community. So even like our Python SDK is created by one like the mining pool, and one of the good things about this miner is like they have like they got a revenue from the blockchain, so they will like so in any situation like they will stand out and protect the chain, like even like when they found a bug, when they found a bug, they are not using it to steal money from other people. They will like come to us and says, okay, we found a bug, and just fix it. So I think this is like a really advantage of proof of work is it's actually like where like get a group of people which is really love the chain and want to protect the chain.
Got it. And right now, we have great use cases. We have a lot of dApps. But when and how will you see mass adoption unfolding for public blockchains? And a great example of that, I say, would be, Tron. They harness the gaming community. You have, certain platforms harnessing DeFi, decentralized finance. But where do you see that sort of entry point for public blockchains to come in and gather the masses?
I think, and Nick mentioned it earlier on about certain industries are more regulated than others. I think the one area that is kind of untapped and there's a huge opportunity is ad tech and martech, mainly because, and we've seen this with how certain companies have handled consumer data. I actually think that is how you handle consumer data or data in general is a core part of your brand. And now we're actually seeing that with like Facebook has been trying to roll out certain things that impact financial transactions. And they're having a hard time doing it because people don't trust their how they handle their data. And I think sharing and liking pictures and you got puppies and cats up there on the internet, that's one thing. But when we're literally, which is the core aspect of blockchain, exchanging value with other people and exchanging your financial information, I think that's a level that people realize that data integrity, data sovereignty is really a big opportunity to help my brand out. So I think with ad tech and martech, it's not very regulated, but there's a huge opportunity for people to embrace public change to make sure to help their customers understand like your data is safe because it's protected by this whole global community. And I think that it'll take off pretty quickly once you see people going down that path.
I like that answer. For the short and medium term, especially for those who are building on blockchain, recognizing what it's good at and using that as their value for while they're there makes a ton of sense to me. When you were talking about adoption, what I was thinking is, I think adoption happens when my mom and my dad use a blockchain without knowing it. Like today, not today, but last weekend I was talking to my father about, this is how you make a key. Watch in command line, type some stuff. This is in showing him sort of all the workflows around it, and I love that stuff. And my dad is a smart guy and says, I'm never going to use this. And, we already have exchanges and other offerings that are sort of reducing the barrier to entry in some ways, but possibly at the cost of decentralization. I think there's ways for adoption to happen by making that infrastructure so easy to get onto. So an iOS dev or Android dev is using another library that brings in the blockchain of their choice, preferably Algorand, but there's other really good options up here too. But the reality is they should be able to do that and incorporate that in an app that a user is familiar with without the user necessarily needing to know other than the value prop of the blockchain is behind there, but not have to pay with the pain of the blockchain along the way.
Got it. And is that something Algorand is focusing on, or more your layer
very-
one, hopefully developers will come along and build something cool to onboard?
So I think, so layer one will always innovate there, but I think layer two and the dev world and these partnerships are where I'm spending a lot of my mental time. I want to find that, that use case to showcase this perfect path of development. And once we have that, I think, one time, then replicating it becomes easier. One thing I actually wanted to mention is the financial world loves blockchains because of finality, if the finality exists, because of security. And so adoption there is giving them something they understand. ISDA, the International Swaps Derivatives Association, created a data model that they use for interchanging their swaps and derivatives every day. But they do that right now one-to-one or via other mechanisms like the internet or VPN. That's not safe for them. They have to take a lot of risk. Algorand is building that into our protocol at a fundamental level, so you can't have a mistake like a overflow error where you lose your trillions of dollars. I think that would be unpalatable. So we're working on that side as well to help with adoption.
Right. And Nick, I know you touched briefly on, DeFi, gaming, and all of those, but in your opinion, what would be the top, I guess, use case for pushing mass adoption forward?
Yeah, well, I first want to say that I think Naveed has a really good point when he's talking about the interface itself being so primitive that it's really hard for users to even, buy their first cryptocurrency or create their own wallet or let alone use the application, like if they want to make a CDP on MakerDAO or something. And so the interface itself has, a lot of work to go. But I think we're rapidly getting there. And I just want to spend a little more time talking about why gaming specifically is such a powerful use case. And that is because gamers have actually been some of the people to adopt early technologies first, because they tend to actually be more technical than your average consumer. They tend to be, they were the first people to really adopt the internet to play, online games. That was one of the major use cases for the internet at the beginning. And the gamers are already used to this concept of having digital ownership, whether there's currencies like gold in like World of Warcraft or something similar, or items that they can trade that exist digitally. They're not physical. And so I think they're kind of already primed to understand the way that blockchains work and the way that cryptocurrencies work. And actually, if you look at the statistics of the demographics of gamers and people who invest in or participate in sort of cryptocurrency communities, there's a massive overlap. Unfortunately, it tends to be younger males primarily. But I think that overlap of demographics also speaks to the sort of congruence of those two groups. And so that's why I think that gaming really is, aside from the technology side, which we talked about in the regulation, just from the user perspective, really, really one of the entry points for cryptocurrency.
Definitely, I definitely agree. And plus, they were some of the people that adopted Bitcoin first back in the day when they used to play gaming tournaments and actually earn Bitcoin.
Exactly.
I wish I was one of those, but sadly. James?
Okay, so about when and how the blockchain will be adoption. So my answer is like, I don't know. I think this is like the whole blockchain industry are looking for. So I see like many chains are looking for the working with the enterprise. Honestly, say like I think it's 2 months before we actually work with the one of the like top 10 gaming company in China and want adopting the blockchain into their system, and they actually reject it. Yeah, because they said if they do it, it's actually like replace the whole industry. So they reject it. And but about one, I have a guess. So currently, like there are like so many chains. I see thousands of chains, right? But actually, I think it's kind of like the internet in the 19th century is still the bubble time. So I think like when like 95 or 99% of chains are dead, then it should be the time to see like the real adoption. Because currently, like in the blockchain industry, like most companies are just not really working on the technology. They are just to do the ICO stuff.
Thanks for sharing, James. So that about wraps up our panel. I thank you so much, everyone, for sharing your perspective. I mean, it's great to hear from companies like ETC Labs, Algorand, Harmony, and Bytom themselves, and all the challenges and trends that public blockchains are facing and will face in the future. But that wraps it up. Thank you, guys. Give them a round of applause.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.